Hey James, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So today I'm joined by James Case. He's the Associate Director of Revenue Operations at Healthie. And it's not healthy spelled the way you would think about it. It's how would you spell healthy?
Healthie. A little spin on the word.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about you and what's in your remit over at Healthie.
Awesome. Healthy, we're an EHR platform. We provide longitudinal care for a lot of nutritionists, dietitians, and a number of other providers out there. I'd say the main purpose of the platform is to help our providers and caretakers, doctors provide the best care possible because we're doing all the administrative work for them, kind of thing. So we help them with their schedule, with scheduling, billing, a number of other pieces of the puzzle for each and every doctor's office. And we're not at the scale of some of the larger players like an Epic, but definitely lots of room to help providers out there, and that's kind of the name of the game is try to help them provide better care for everyone, and hopefully, all boats rise when that happens.
Cool. So you're in the electronic health records space, EHR. I've known it as the EMR space, electronic medical record space. My younger brother actually worked at Epic for a few years.
Nice.
He's an Epic consultant now, so it's a space that I know pretty well. I think Cerner is also a competitor up at the enterprise,
Right,
if I
right.
recall. Okay, yeah, that's great. So you've worked in the health tech space for quite some time. Tell me a little bit about, your journey and some of the firms that you've worked at in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Not, I think with many revenue operations or sales operations folks out there, the journey is not a straight line; it's a zigzag. So I actually started in healthcare and as a customer service role, which then led to sales and operations in various companies. Kind of figured out. Um, During my sales tenure that there the systems that we're using can be adjusted and improved, and that kind of is where I felt the best use of my time, where I figured out how to use platforms like Salesforce and HubSpot, how to make them better, how to help the team become more effective and efficient. And that has led me to that did lead me to my first operations role, and I've kind of stuck with it since. So after getting into it, that was at a um, uh, Google Ad Space company, software that helps folks with Google Ads, and then went to slid into a business operations role at a company that sold hardware and software to the CBSs and NBCs of the world, a company called Chiron, and then landed at Nava Benefits, which is a benefits brokerage, which was super neat company and great experience to be um, a founding member of the sales operations team and being able to build out a lot of the functionality for the go-to-market functions. And from there, ended up wanting to make a change and came over to Healthy for the last year and have been leading a lot of progress and change here, which I feel super about because, again, if the um, part of me that wanted to feel the most fulfilled, if I could touch on that for a moment, is in an industry like healthcare and being at a company like Healthy. Can't uh, stress the importance of what we do because it impacts so many people, not only the doctors and providers that we help, but also their patients, which is super neat to also hear from them and how our platform is helping them out.
That's very cool. So I worked at a company called Patient Pop. If you think of EHR as the back end of of the healthcare chain, the back office, we were the front office. So, site builders, website builders for private clinicians, 15 practitioners
Nice.
under. And even then, we had to train the entire team to be HIPAA compliant just because within the space that we operate in. So there's some nuances in the vertical, highly regulated, which do present some challenges. So I'm curious about, when you learned the revenue operations, so you came from a frontline role, you were in support. And so you had the opportunity to see firsthand how to do your job in the systems with the processes, with maybe the reporting at your hands. I'm curious how that shaped your ability to, fundamentally think about revenue operations and where to learn it.
A lot more empathy for the folks that are in those roles, for sure. And also, you learn a lot of great skills in those roles too. For anyone that thinks you only do sales and sales, that is false. I can attest to that with my two young children. Sales is an ongoing thing that you're always doing, trying to convince them and negotiate with them to brush their teeth that night. Um, but that definitely influenced the way that I manage in operations and what I think I should prioritize, what I think I should work on, what I think the team should work on, and review regarding reports and metrics, and what their focal point should be. Also, trying to provide them feedback on an ongoing basis and getting them to work in more collaborative environments. Granted, Healthy is and even Nava as well. And there are a lot of companies out there that are remote. I think the best experience for a sales team is to work in person because that's where you get to hear everybody else on the phone. You get to even if you're busy prospecting and then you just hear a conversation happen, you're listening to that. You're hearing how someone talks about a particular subject or feature or anything, and then you can input that into how you progress and how you uh, 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 speak to prospects or anyone else. And it can be incredibly helpful to have that kind of scenario play out over and over again in a sales capacity. Um, Other than that, I mean, what I also try to keep in mind is change management, regardless of the department that you're working with. But in sales, um, they're definitely a unique set of folks that work in those kind of roles, and any kind of change that you make, you need to make sure that you're not bombarding them with a ton of change because they're working at 100 miles an hour most of the time, and so you're just trying to provide a steady flow of updates with not nothing one that comes out of left field, and then two, you're not again bombarding them with 10 different updates and you have to explain each one.
Yep, no, that makes sense. So when you're thinking about, I call it the art of resourcefulness, right? So, you might be the one or only ops person in your company, or maybe there's a few others, but how did you learn to do or complete some of the work that you're doing? So, for example, change management, so critical in almost every aspect of revenue operations. What is where did you learn and where did you put into practice?
Sure. I like the prioritization of P1, P to P5 kind of labeling system. With that revolves around whichever system that you end up using. You need to incorporate regular meetings with department heads to make sure where their head's at with what they want to accomplish and complete. Then you take all of those things in consideration. Just because something's important doesn't mean it's urgent, and just because something's urgent doesn't mean it's important. And you're just trying to put everything in a direction that makes the most sense. Also, you need to take into consideration your own skill set and what something might be a bigger frog regarding if you're more familiar with that particular task and how you can get it done. If you need to rely on a different team member, um, or have it uh, uh, kind of farm it out to either a third party or just someone else in the company. Maybe you need to get somebody else to hop in and help you out with it. So regarding prioritization, I rely on um, where I think the business is, where I think the business needs to head, based off of my own skill set, based off of where we are at the quarter. Also, you need to take into consideration, if we're doing well in sales, maybe I can pull back on that a little bit. And work on some other departments. But if we're not doing so well, maybe that's where I should spend my time, making sure that the sales team has what they need to be successful. Um, and yeah, I think it's just I wish I could provide a better answer. I think it's just based off of experience as well, quite honestly.
Yep.
Been doing it for Long enough to know where to spend my time, and but again, like working with everyone at Healthy is definitely helpful too. Obviously, knowing where they want their time spent.
I think one of the things you talked about was a prioritization exercise. I find that critically important. For one, a couple of things to identify, what are the top priorities for which the ops team should spend their time. And I like to use like a urgency impact matrix. And so if it's high impact but yet high effort, those are your big rocks, your big projects. You can only really take on so many of those just due to capacity, maybe
Right.
even capability, right? Some folks don't have the skills to accomplish a certain task, and that's why you bring in third-party help. And then those quick wins, right? High impact, low effort. Those are the things that you always want to tackle because they build credibility very quickly for the team. So with that, I know, tell me a little bit about your technology stack. What's in, what are you working with?
Great question. Um, Fairly large tech stack. Salesforce, HubSpot, Clay, Apollo, Ringlead. Love Ringlead. There's a number of others: Mixpanel, Zapier, Partner Stack, Help Scout, Slack, obviously. So yeah, there's a good number Notion. There's a good number of various platforms, and the neat part is figuring out once you know how each platform works independently with their own automation, like building a flow in Salesforce or building a workflow in HubSpot, you have an easier time making sure that the data flows correctly in a certain way. And then you can bring on a tool like a Zapier that just fills in the gaps everywhere else. And it's really cool to see.
Okay, so each tool is like its own little kingdom unto itself, right? It has a target audience within your business, target technical users, but they also have their own workflows. One thing that I'm always worried about is sprawl or extreme technical debt. And you have that within each particular system. And then you're building these workflows that go across systems or between systems as middleware. And so then you're layering on another set of technical debt. What's in your mind the best way to, make sure that you stay organized and then also communicate with others, what's working and how to improve it going forward?
Keep it simple for sure. You don't need that many automations in the independent systems, but it's good to have because that's what they're there for. Um, I tend to lean more so on if I can do something within a particular system, I would rather do it that way than using going outside the box and using outsourcing it to a Zapier, for example. Um, but once I know what can or can't be done, then that's when I would lean on outsourcing it to Zapier, just because there's so much you can already do within these systems that I would rather it's built for those things. Again, keeping it simple, not having too much automation within the systems makes it fairly easy to keep track of. And then also regarding technical debt, I mean, having recurring reviews of your systems, whether that happens at the end of the year, the start of the year, or anywhere in between, definitely something to keep in mind also for sure.
So you talked about using Zapier. I've used Zapier extensively to build agentic workflows or add AI into it. They even have an agents capability. I'm curious to hear about some of the experimentation or things that you've built using LLMs or AI inside of your workflows.
Great question. Great example would be within, so specifically with Zapier. I don't know if I'm going to be loved or hated for this, but I'll bring it up. We were looking for a way to capture call information or call summaries within our Salesforce platform. And there is, a way they do have a built-in functionality out of the box that you can use. We went the route of Zapier to import call summaries and record them as notes associated to accounts. Um, so it's connected to Zoom. We have an agent in Zapier that takes that call information, summarizes it for us based off of a prompt. So it can you can use the base model that comes from Zapier, or you can connect it to a Claude or a different model, depending on what your needs are, what you think needs to happen. and then the output is sent to it creates a record in Salesforce, which is tremendous. Just the administrative load that you're removing from a team, and that's primarily, I think, both how the a platform like a Zapier could be used initially is time savings, and also just like how to think through how a platform like that should be used, where it's a business challenge that you're trying to solve. How should you solve it? And quite honestly, RevOps and sales ops and anything in between, excuse me, tends to be best positions for a role like that or that kind of work, just because we're already thinking about systems, we're already thinking about how everything kind of connects, and all you're doing at the end of the day is using a system, a platform like a Zapier that can connect to just about anything, and they make it super easy for you to use too. They have great support also. That I'm not getting paid for this, but they have great support also, and very helpful in making sure that what you need is built the way that it should be. Basically, following their best practices on how to use the platform, just like you would with any other system.
Is that a support team or a specific AI team that you're in consulting with? Because usually I haven't, I built my AI my workflows in Zapier, but haven't engaged with like the Zapier team.
Support is usually very helpful. If you were to move forward or require a particular plan and get that dedicated support, it's even more wonderful.
Okay, that's super cool, actually. I didn't realize that. So we talked about AI a little bit. I'd love to switch gears to like other projects that you're currently working on. I'd love to hear about maybe a most recent project or something that you're currently working on within Healthy.
Sure. I would say the primary thing I'm working on would actually be AI and creating agents for the whole company. So primarily starting with the go-to-market functions and then from there expanding it to the rest of the company. It's really neat to see once we do have certain agents or AI set up, how much easier you're making everyone's lives at the organization. Again, making them more efficient, effective, and taking a lot of the day-to-day stuff off their plate. So if they have to create a note in a system, automating that so they are spending less time doing that, summarizing any kind of information, providing a draft follow-up email after a call so they don't have to think about it. They can just take the information and edit it as they wish, as long as all of it makes sense. So it's always good to review anything that AI provides. Um, and that again would be like the primary focus right now because we're trying to build this out, make sure we get it right, and then roll it out to the entire organization, which in my past I have rolled out similar or I have had or led similar projects rolling out a system to an entire org, but I haven't rolled out AI yet to an entire org. So this will be a really great learning experience for me.
So realistically, what I'm hearing is you're identifying repetitive tasks that are kind of the high effort, unknown, low impact, but that has to be done. These are like your day-to-day thankless tasks. And so taking that off a team's plate is hugely helpful, right? It's like, okay, well, it's helpful because you're now taking time off my plate, which I can then reallocate it to a higher value activity or an endeavor. So I think that's hugely helpful. When you're thinking of use cases, how do you have like a whiteboard or a list, or how are you canvassing the ideas across the business and then identifying and then triaging them using your P1 to P6 scale?
Sure. We internally use Monday.com for all of our project management, or a lot of it. And so I have a an AI board that I keep track of all the requests, what status they're in, if they're in progress or if they are in review or completed, etc. And and then that's also where I can prioritize them. I have different groupings for P1, P2, P3. Um, and and that's basically where I consolidate everything. I manage everything. I can also provide feedback or get feedback for any of the key stakeholders that I'm working with for that particular agent. It just makes it a lot easier to manage everything too. If you have one place where you're saying, okay, here are all the agents that we're working on, here's why I'm building these agents, and again, being able to work in conjunction with a lot of the other folks in the organization, and then if need be, as many times as necessary, have calls to review everything as well. Because I find I would almost try to over communicate than under communicate. And sometimes it's necessary to get on additional calls just to make sure everyone's on the same page. You'd be surprised at how many times things can get off track if you don't do that.
So, thank you for that. One thing we talked about last time was don't just do AI for the sake of doing AI, have a purpose to it. So, I always ask this at the end of the show, like, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to leave for the RevOps and go-to-market community?
Have a plan. Planning is, regardless of if it's in RevOps or any kind of role, you want to make sure there's some kind of plan available, and you have a good mind on how things should be rolled out or implemented when it comes to Zapier and agents in general. For example, you want to make sure you have a good business case. What is the business case that you're trying to solve? Does it even require an agent or AI to help you with that? And then if it is, great. How do we then make the best use of the platform to create that solution? How are you tracking it? How are you reviewing the agent too? If at some point you end up having a lot of folks outside of the RevOps team build their own agents, how do you have kind of like some rigor around that to make sure that they're building it correctly and that it works and that you're not using up all your credits, as it were? Um, so there's just a number of things that you want to have in place to make sure that it's scalable. That's the biggest thing I would probably say is regardless what you're working on, whether it be an AI, make sure it's as scalable as possible. Because the way that I like to operate, for better or worse, is I'm usually trying to work my way out of a job. So so if I can make sure that each department is able to be self-sufficient and work without my help, then it's just then I can start working on improvements to what they're currently doing, as opposed to just making things work in general.
Okay, I love that. So, for those who want to reach out to you directly, James, and where can they find you and where can they learn more about Healthy?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look me up, James Case. And my work email is james.case@gethealthy.com. Get Healthy is healthy is IE, ending in IE.com.
Yep, and that's Case with a K, correct?
Case with a K. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I usually say that. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, James. Appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff.